We're going to take a few minutes and look at Colossians chapter number 4. We've been going through Colossians now for several weeks. This is the 24th message, I believe, if I looked at correctly, as we've broken down Colossians verse by verse. And tonight, we're going to look at two verses. What I want to do is I want to take just the last couple of weeks, slow down a little bit, and look at some closing thoughts that Paul, and when I first read this a couple weeks ago, I looked at maybe one or two closing thoughts, and as I evaluated and listened to other things and read on it, there's some things that I think we can learn from some of the men and some of the people and some of the situations that Apostle Paul mentioned. Tonight I want to preach a message simply entitled, The Burden Bearer. The Burden Bearer. Colossians chapter 4, starting in verse number 7. Paul says this, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, he says, In my state shall Tychicus declare unto you, who is a beloved brethren, a faithful minister, and fellow servant in the Lord, whom I have sent unto you for the same purpose, that he might know your estate and comfort your hearts. As Paul's beginning to conclude the end of this section, his letter to the church of Colossae, he begins ending by naming certain people that a lot of times you don't see. Now, unless you're really into reading a lot, understanding, to most of us, how many would say most of us, the name Tychicus, no matter how many say the name, is an unfamiliar name. You know you've heard it, but to an extent unfamiliar. Okay, most of us it would be. You could find out he's also mentioned in Ephesians, but pretty much an unfamiliar name. Now, this man was the one that Paul was in prison. He would go to Paul, and he would get the information, and then he would share it. He would go. He was the one delivering the message of Colossians to the church of Colossae. And he would travel. By the way, they didn't have FedEx or UPS in those days, and so this man would have to walk or ride a camel or something miles, I think it was 120 some miles if I read it correctly, by himself to deliver this information. And then when he got there, he was getting there to find out the state of the church and be an encouragement. Now, I call him tonight a burden bearer for this reason. Paul, I can imagine, as he's sitting in prison. He's unable to leave. He's frustrated. He's discouraged. He's there for a reason, but his heart would be, I wish I could be at this church. He said, I wish that God would give me the freedom to speak as I ought, he said a few verses earlier. And so he couldn't move. He couldn't leave. And so there was men like Tychicus that would come, and they would hear of his estate, and then they were sent out by him to do the things that Paul could not do. To fulfill the missions that Paul was unable to fulfill. In that case, bearing the burden of this apostle to the church at Colossae. You know, they didn't have email and text. Can you imagine? I remember the day before GPS. Remember that? I was talking to the other day, someone got lost. Oh, that was the best. You're talking about her phone went dead. Her GPS didn't work anymore. And I thought to myself, I remember those days. I feel like it was 2 years ago, right? You're in a car. What do you do? In those days, you remember, men, if you're a little older, you lived prior to the GPS woman telling us what to do. You remember those days? And you get lost. What did your wife say? Stop and ask for directions. And what did you say, man? I know where I'm at. I have seen that tree 4 times. I know where I'm at. I have no idea. What we never said was, I have no idea where I'm going. I know where I'm at. I am lost somewhere in Middletown Township, and I know. So if I get lost enough, I'm calling Frank McKenna. He knows Middletown Township like the back of his hand, right? I won't ask. And we would drive around like crazy. And I remember one time I did this. I'm pulling down. It's funny because I live right around the corner from this. But back when I was in high school, I just got back from college, hadn't driven a whole lot. And I pull down I'm on Gibson Road, or New Falls Road, and I hit Bensalem Boulevard. I didn't know which way to go. So I went the wrong way. And when I got home, I said, man, I found a quick way home. I ended up going like all the way down to 13, and I got to 13 all the way down to State Road to get to the church. Then I went to Street Road all the way down to Richelieu, pulled in, and I remember thinking, man, I'm learning the area. This is awesome. To learn, I wasted like 10 minutes or something like that. And then you know what happened? I took a turn the other way accidentally. Oh, my goodness. I could have been there quicker, all right? That was all pre-GPS times. I can't imagine. Now today, you go punch in information, hit a couple buttons, it'll tell you how to get to where to go. Good night, Alexa. This is how lazy we are in our house right now. I love it. I installed it myself for this purpose. We lay watching TV, and I don't want the light on. So what do? I get up and turn the light off. Oh, no, sirree, I do not. I lean back and I go, Alexa, turn off the lights. And you know what happened? The lights go dead. It's a miracle. A woman actually listened. It was amazing. I know I am in big trouble right now. Just kidding, because I'm in trouble now. But it's awesome. You lay there, and then we have a salt rock connected to it, and it's amazing because my wife will say, Alexa, turn off salt rock. And you hear, doink, and nothing happens. And I'm like, the two women are fighting in the house. I'm getting out of the room, all right? The women run, I'm not doing this. And then all of a sudden, you know it's not working when you hear the other woman, Alexa. I'm like, woo, staying back. There's a fight because it just wasn't listening. I love it. I mean, man, you can tell Alexa to do anything, and she'll give you instructions. We live in such an easy day. Can you imagine, though, if someone said, I need this letter to get to this church. Here's a 120-mile walk. Go. And we have this now. We have this because a man like this was able to take it, write it down, and give it to this church. And now we still use it today because of this man who was Paul's burden bearer. Simply this, that there are burdens that God gives that only can be fulfilled by certain people. Tonight, I really want to look at this particular. So I'm going to look at a little bit who he was, and then I'm going to do a little bit of breakdown of how this can be fulfilled in our church. I'm going to look at a couple of things, three things, I think, tonight. Number one, let's look at the description of a burden bearer. A description of a burden bearer, basically a description of this man, Tychius. And let me see, I go back to verse number 7, where he is described. Paul says this, all my state shall Tychius declare unto you, who is three things, a beloved brother, a faithful minister, and a fellow servant in the Lord. First of all, he said he was a beloved brother. Simply, as one man put it, he was an encourager. There was stories told of a couple young kids that were sitting in a room, and the mom and dad heard them. They were friends playing, and the mom and dad heard them, and they seemed to be yelling and screaming at each other, and a fight was about to break out. And so the mom and dad decided to go in, and they were going to solve the problem. And they walked in and saw the kids with their friends, and they said, what's going on? Stop the fighting. And the kids go, Mom and Dad, we're not fighting. We're playing church. Right? Now, sometimes, is that what some people see? They arguing all this. You know, we get different views of all kinds of different things. Can I tell you something, beloved brother, an encourager? When you meet an encourager, it's the kind of person you want to be around, isn't it? You get around somebody, let me tell you, there's two different kinds of people, really. I mean, you got someone who kind of remains silent and watches from a distance. Besides that person, you got two extremes. You've got your encourager and your, can I use discourager, your critic, all right? Your encourager is like, hey, that was great. This is awesome. When I was down with my dad at the church, the school he works at, and they was connected to a church, we had done the Monday morning service, and I preached, and my dad asked me, he goes, the service, the time's 45 minutes. Please keep it in 45 minutes. And I was like, one Baptist preacher tell another Baptist preacher that. What's he thinking? But I did. Right at 45, we were done. We dismissed, and the preacher was very gracious to me. And then about 10 minutes later, my dad picked up the phone. He got a text. And he goes, this is for you. And he read a text from the pastor who said, thank you for keeping it within the time. It says a lot about, and he was just thanking him over something small. And he says, this man's like this all the time. I walk by the hallway, and he's just thanking everybody for doing everything. Now, that is an encourager. That is someone, you know what? I like that kind of person. I want to be around them. I want to be someone who's an encourager. Hey, thank you for doing this. That was great. Appreciate this. That was wonderful. Then you got the other person who they're just walking around trying to find everything wrong. You know what I'm talking about? It's too cold in here. It's too hot in here. This morning, I tell you, I get to see from the pulpit things people don't see. I felt so bad. I almost had someone turn the heat on today. There's a young lady about 2/3 on the right-hand side on the way back. And apparently, she's sitting right under a vent because the entire service, she's like this, the entire service. I was about to stop and ask someone to go get her blanket. I mean, she looked so cold, sitting down there shivering. And but you know, someone said, it's too cold, it's too hot, it's too this, it's too that. I don't like. And you're gonna find, you know, some people, you know, when they're gonna criticize something, they're awake. You know what I'm talking about. And by the way, if you're not thinking of someone right now, they're probably thinking of you. Right? He was a beloved brother and an encourager. Number two, he was a faithful minister. He was trustworthy. This is someone who sees the need and is willing to dedicate himself to the task. They're not looking to be seen or bragged on. They're just looking to serve. Can I suggest that a healthy church cannot function without people just like this? I'm going to give you, think about this. How about someone who cleans the building, someone who works in children's church, someone who cuts the grass, someone who pulls the weeds? You can't work without that kind of person. Willing just to go do it. Say, let me take care of it. These are all the things that are needed that are often not noticed, but yet still need to be done. Number 3, he said he was a fellow servant. He's humble. This seems to be a man that was more concerned about his work than about his name. I say this because most of us wouldn't even recognize his name before tonight, and after the service we still remember his name, but we'll remember his work. Why? Because we've been studying it for months now. He got the letter to Colossae, and we still use that same letter. Because he said, Paul, you want it? I'll do it. When we were in Italy, we were sitting at the with the Maritime Prison, I think was the name of it, where they believe Paul was held, and we're reading 1 Timothy. And what's amazing is he's talking about only Timothy, naming people who are with them, who are writing this, as he's sitting in a filthy prison. And he's talking about, this person is with me, send this person. And I'm thinking about what it must have been like to sit over the prison and write the information that Paul was just speaking, because Paul didn't have the utensils. And being that instrument, knowing that at any point a Roman soldier could come and throw him in jail because he's associated with this heretic, Paul. What a servant. Someone saying, hey, I can do this part. No one needs to know who it is. I can do it. The biggest battle, often in ministry or when it just comes to serving, is I'll serve if I can be seen. As long as everybody knows I did this. You watch certain people like that, right? They won't help at all until 3 people show up. Bam, they're the busiest person in the room. Why? Because now someone's watching. Now, when no one else is in the room, they're sitting back there, I don't know what they're doing. Just sit back there staring, but now it's busy. And some are like that. And let me tell you, what he's talking about here is not about someone who is being seen and being noticed. It's about someone who says, whether anybody sees me, he does, and that's all that matters. Let me tell you what I believe with all my heart. God was telling Peter about one day there'll be reversal in heaven. Many that first shall be last, and the last shall be first. You know what I believe? I believe we get to heaven. I don't think it'll work this way, really, but if it worked this way, where you would see the important people go first. You know what we'd assume? Okay, there's a list of preachers, D.L. Moody and Spurgeon, and we could list other preachers today that have built big ministries, that have made influences in our life and have written a lot of books. And we sit back and say, of course, these men, these people would go first. Can I tell you, I'm more inclined to believe that the person who served in the church, who didn't necessarily get a paycheck, didn't necessarily ever get noticed, was there fixing this or working on this or making this happen and nobody knew about it, will be the one that Jesus will pull up first, because they were the one that worked and were never seen. They were considered last here in the world, and God says they will be first here in heaven because they're fellow servants. So what does that mean? Let's look, number 2, at the need of a burden bearer. The need of a burden bearer. First of all, we got to understand the plan that God has in place at the church. This is how God planned the church to be. Remember, the church is not a building. It is the group of people. It's the body of Christ. It is you. Therefore, it will take the body to make the church effective. I want to read a few verses. Romans 12, 3-6 says this, For I say, to the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, according as God has dealt to every man the measure of faith. For as we have many members in one body, and all members have not the same office, so we being many are one body in Christ, and every one members one of another, having then gifts different according to the grace that is given to us. Now, if you continue to read and go on and talk about the gifts of the Holy Spirit given to you. I started with that with the premise. All that being said, let us be sober. 1, clear who we are. Hey, I can do this, I can't do this. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, back at the Parsons, when I lived back there, we had a tree back there, and it was waving at us like crazy. I was convinced it was coming over. And my wife goes, hey, you think Mike Hess will help cut it down? You know why I wanted Mike Hess to help cut it down? Because if I'd gone 3 feet in that tree, I would have cried. I'm telling you. One time we tried to get us cut, and I climbed up. And, if you're like me, you climb up, you're on about the 3rd or 4th branch, and you're like, I got to be 40 feet in the air. And then your 10-year-old son taps you on the heel. Dad, I need some help, right? So Mike, we put this ladder up there, and he goes, you got it? And I'm like, yep. I don't know. You get up there, we'll see. And he just keeps climbing. I'm getting scared. I'm like kneeling lower and lower as he's climbing the tree. He's got a chainsaw and he's going to town. No big deal. Why? Because he can do that. You hand me a chainsaw, everybody runs. They should, right? It'd be a smart thing to do. You call the right person to do the job. Now, there are certain things that you just say, it's not my gift in church. Certain things, it is. Some of you should never work with kids. You might hurt them, right? You don't have patience. Some of you work with kids, right? Some of you, if you work with teenagers, they scare the daylights out of you. You'd walk in and say, and some of you walk in and you're just like the kids, right? You're nuts, crazy. That's who's supposed to be there. The premise is to think soberly, this is who I am, and God has used me, or gifted me to do this. So let me see number two, the problem. The work is just too great for one person to work in a church. There's not one way. Well, there's no way for us to effectively minister through just a couple of people. Simple example, as the church grows and adds new people, it becomes impossible for just me to connect with everyone every week. Every once in a while, people say, well, did you get a hold of so-and-so? You get a hold of so-and-so, you get a hold of so-and-so. I wish I could get a hold of so-and-so every week. And then a couple years ago, someone, you didn't call this person, you didn't call this person. Can I be honest? There's a thought that goes through my mind when someone comes in and says, why didn't you do this? You know what I want to say? Why didn't you? Why does it always have to be? I don't mind, I'll do it. But we have this idea, the pastor's the only one that can visit, the pastor's the only one that can do this, the pastor's the only one that can do this. Why not everybody do it? Personally, I think it's great if I'm the third or fourth person to be doing it. You see, we're busy. Yeah, I'm not denying you're not busy. But there comes this idea, he's just the preacher, that's all he does. I wish that were true. Now, I'm not trying to say that because I want less work. Let me tell you something. If we as a ministry minimize or limit the outreach we have to others in this church by what I do, this church is going to suffer. And if we limit it just to the deacons, why? Because let's say God doubles the size of our church and we're running 400. How are we going to keep up? You can't. And that's why there's a burden bearer who says, you know what? I see the need. Let me deal with it. Throughout the years, I've every once in a while had someone come to me, and they walk in and say, Pastor, and they describe a problem, usually a physical problem in the building. And I say, okay, and I'm turning around to go solve it, and they say, no. I've already fixed it. I just wanted you to know it's been fixed. That kind of person, I just want to hug them. I don't, but you want to, right? You just want to say, thank you. I just cry, right? I don't have to go do it. And there's other people, Pastor, there's a problem down there. Okay. Just thought I'd let you know. Help, please, right? I'll give you an example. A couple years ago, some of you may not know this, a few years ago, we have in case you didn't notice, we have an old building here. And I think it was built in the 1800s. And so we have pumps. There's a manhole cover that sits right in front of the main door of the gym. In that manhole cover, and in the manhole, is two pumps. And it sucks the water away from this building. And as it sucks it away, and then it drains it down through the retention. This building was not updated with the drainage system when the gym was built, and so it just sucks it away. Well, what we didn't know, there was power. There's a red light. If you ever walk into the glass doors, there's a red light there. You know what that light is? It lets us know the pumps are still working. Well, we had a problem. The red light was on, and the pumps were not. They both died. Just gone. You know how I learned this? We had, the night before Christmas, we had church moved up to Tuesday. But AA meets on Wednesday. They still came Wednesday. So they showed up, and they did their thing, and then at about 11:30 at night, I get a phone call, and he goes, yeah, this is Rich from AA. He goes, you know you got a flood in your basement? And I thought maybe a little bit of water on the back. I said, well, a little bit of water? Okay, I'll come tomorrow and deal with it. He goes, Pastor, I don't think you understand. There's like 6 inches of water at the bottom of the stairs. I'm like, say, what? So it was actually the night before. So Christmas Eve was that midnight. So I pull up, I come in, and I go down the bottom of these stairs right there, and I made a mistake. I didn't pay attention. I wasn't listening. I just went straight down, and the water came halfway up my calf. I came up, and it was cold water. And I got up there, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I've never seen it down that way. The worst part was I walked into the rest of the basement, and it was deeper all the way through. And so I did what I've always done with leaks in the basement. Let's get the shop vac. I'm serious. We filled it, and then we picked it up. We're going to be here all night long. And so when a guy goes, I know a guy who does restoration. He came in about 2 hours later. But you know what? In that, 3 hours, well, it's about till 4 in the morning, as we tried to clean things up. There was 4 guys with AA, and I was going to call some guys at the church. He goes, no, we're going to stick around. And they stuck around, moved stuff, and helped us clean the entire basement until it was spotless. One of them left at 5 in the morning and went to work. Now, they don't attend our church. One, they were just grateful that we let them use the building. But you know, for me, that was a great burden bearer, that I didn't have to spend all day cleaning the entire building. Now, there are some men who would have done if I called them. It just happened to be that these men were here, and they were already in the process of cleaning it when I got here. There's the key. Someone who sees the problem and says, you know what, there's a problem, and I can help be the solution. What's the progress then? What's the progress? The group, as a group dedicated to God's work, will see great things from God. A group that does it. The saying goes like this: many hands make light work. Let me give you an example, okay? Let's just give you an idea of what happens on Sunday or on the week through here, okay? Just what you may not see. On Sunday, people show up early to open the building and check it. Usually, a couple of them here about 8 o'clock in the morning, and they check the building, and they prep things for counting money, and they make sure our air conditioners are working. We turn the projectors out, make sure the mics are working. We're here usually early. Then they're obviously prepping the auditorium, cleaning up anything we missed, fixing all the things, getting rid of the ants, all the different things, whatever's happening here. Then there's greeters who wait out by the door, get there early, wait by the door to greet people coming in. There's ushers who are busy working, helping people find places. There's a nursery. And we don't even notice it unless you use it all the way at the other end of the building. There's a nursery going on. Teachers show up. They've been working for days at this point, preparing a lesson that they're going to come in and teach to a class of all ages, hoping they can keep them awake. That's the biggest hard part on Sunday morning, right? Keeping everybody awake. The choir has practiced Sunday night at 5 o'clock and then has worked, and then we'll come back. Special music has been working throughout the week and practicing, and they'll show up on Sunday to get ready to sing. We got the security now. We've added security. There's people, someone downstairs right now, watching on the television, keeping an eye, helping us secure the building. Then there's an offering that we take in the middle. But after that's done, you got people who come on Monday to count the money. Now we get to the preaching. All of that has happened, and we haven't even gotten to the preaching yet. And by the way, I'm sure I've missed something that you're doing. By the way, Saturday, Friday, someone come and cuts the grass. No one else knows. Other things are taken care of. Other prep that's taken, rooms are adjusted from school to church to make it work. Counselors are ready. They come afterwards. People sit at the guest services desk, and we haven't even gotten to Wednesday where we start over with that. Can I ask you, if we expected just a group of 2 or 3 people to do this, they would be overwhelmed. All that with we don't even have a full-time maintenance man. Now, what's the point? Because the reason we're able to do what we are on Sundays is because there are people who have donated their time and dedicated their talents to make it work. That is a burden bearer. And the need of any ministry is as people are willing to bear that burden and say, I will make that mine, that will expand. Why? Because it gives other people. It's not sitting back and saying we're just giving him less work. No. You know what happens when you get someone who's on fire for God and you take work off his shoulder? What's he going to do? He's going to pick up something else. That's the idea. Spread it out. Give more people a chance to do more things. Let's look at number 3, the work of a burden bearer. Who is a burden bearer? What are they're thinking? Let me give you a couple thoughts. One, I believe these people are willing. They want to be used of the Lord. Unfortunately, this is not everybody in church. And some come. There's some who will come as a consumer. And I say, those who come and listen and learn, I hope you always keep coming. I hope you enjoy it. But not everybody will be in the pew and say, let me do that. Let me step up. Let me run this ministry. Oh, by the way, in all of that, I even talk about the fact that we got a bunch of people running cameras right now doing live stream. Now, no one ever notices a live stream till it's down. Then I get like 4 texts. What happened? What's going on? Why is the computer down? Did the apocalypse happen? I'm like, seriously, people, it's just a Facebook problem, all right? It is amazing how many people. A couple weeks ago, it live streamed on Facebook, but somehow, we don't know, I think it might have been me, when we turned the computer off, we didn't save it and it erased it from Facebook. You might have thought that we burnt the building down with the amount of text I got that week. In comments on Facebook, I see they're not live streaming on Facebook this week, like all angry or something. I'm like, you can just come to church, you know that, right? And all these comments, what happened? Someone blow the computer up. These people don't know what they're doing. And I'm like, you people are mean, or I'm going to stop live streaming if you people are like that. It's amazing. Little things. And here's the key. These people are willing to say, how can I? Now, the problem why people get a little nervous and say, what's going to happen? What if I mess up? I'll give you an example. Was it last week? someone came to me. We have 2 homes in the back. One of the ladies, some of the ladies in our school, teaching our school, live in it. And they caught me and said, by the way, did you hear about our house? That phrase scares me. Because in my mind, I'm asking, is it still standing? That's really the thought. So, did you hear about the house? And no, there's no hot water. I'm like, man, bummer, boil some water. I mean, I didn't know. I'm stuck. This stinks. So, and we called a guy out here, and he goes, I can't fix the problem. There was a situation we had to redo some stuff, and he goes, he wanted to charge us $2,000 to do it. And I'm like, oh, I'll pay $2,000 to fix a hot water heater. So we said, let's replace it. So I'm coming to church Wednesday night, and I'm like, what am I going to do? And you know what? Somebody said, hey, you know what? I think, and they gave me the name of a guy who can do it, who's in our church, who the next day went and pretty much installed the entire thing for me. That's a huge burden bearer, because I was planning to take the entire day myself. Because here's the thing, I could have waited till Saturday for someone to do it, but that was like Tuesday, and so these ladies would have gone without hot water for 4 more days. So I can throw a hot water heater in, and I didn't have to, because someone else did it for me. They took the burden. They still got hot water, right? Making sure, okay, just checking. I'm glad it's not leaking. At least I've not heard about that yet. You know, I tell you, that is something to me. I look back and see, wow, they were willing. I didn't have to manipulate. It was just, hey, let me help in that situation. What a great, huge blessing. They're willing. They're also dedicated. Understand, this is what it's really all about. This man did not come in because he could be seen. This man did not come in because he said, oh, great, God, Paul, if you put my name in there in verse number 7, I'll do this. He didn't do that. He was just dedicated to what Paul was doing. He understands this really is about the Lord, about his work. They understand how much Satan hates them. Understand, if you serve God, Satan does not like it. Whether you're singing, whether you're preaching, whether you're cutting grass, Satan hates you. He hates you anyway, by the way. He just hates you a little more now. By the way, that's a good thing. You know that, right? It's a good thing when Satan hates you more. All right, if Satan doesn't hate you more, you've become buddies with him, don't work for me, okay? I don't need buddies of Satan. Ephesians 6:12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. They understand this is not easy. When you step up and you're willing to help, I'm going to dedicate myself and I'm going to make this happen. Number 3, they are fruitful. They will see God work through them. Galatians 6:9, and let us not be weary in well-doing. For in due season we shall reap if we faint not. They're fruitful. The Bible talks about having fruit that remains. Years down the road, looking at things that you've been involved in and people are saved as a result of that. They're also rewarded. 1 Corinthians 3:11-14 says, For other foundation can no man lay that is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now if any man build upon this foundation gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, and stubble, every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire, and the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. If any man's work abide, which he hath built thereon, he shall receive a reward. He describes there's precious metals, and he said wood, hay, and stubble. Why? Because some of us work to be seen, because that'll be burned up by fire. But if it remains, you receive a reward because you did this for him, being the burden bearer. Now, let me tell you something. God has given you a gift and has given somewhere here for you a chance to bear burden. Let me give you one example of them. Some people in our church, when they were young, were serving. And as they've grown and gotten older, they've moved from ministry to ministry to ministry to ministry. McKenna's have worked in every ministry out there, I think. I think he built the nursery. You know, I think it's worked everywhere. Helping us in all kinds of different points. A lot of people in here can say that. But you know, at some point, sometimes one of the greatest things a person can do at a certain age, some of them say, I just can't physically do that. Then they just begin to pray for those who do. If you start reading through the history of revivals, you know what you find? You're going to find often older people who begin to pray, God, would you do something here? I can't necessarily do that. I can do only so little. But would you pray? Would you do something? And they just become that burden bearer, and they lift up other people in prayer. Can I tell you, this is from a pastor's point of view. There's a lot of things here, anybody you can jump in and help, and a lot of you do. But can I tell you, there's no greater thing you can do for someone like me, for the staff here, and that's to pray. You don't know. I mentioned this in the deacons meeting last couple nights as we were leaving. The men sitting there, and I pray about this. I know my family, I know their families, their wives and the kids, they definitely got to be under attack because Satan doesn't like the fact they're there. Just doesn't like it. And they're carrying a lot of this burden. The greatest way you can do is just lift up their name before Jesus. And just let them know, hey, I'm praying for you. By the way, don't walk by them today and say, I'm praying for you if you're not. All right? That becomes like the Christian term. You know what I'm talking about? How you doing, brother? Praying for you. That's like, Christian for hi. And then actually praying for you, it's just a knee-jerk reaction we say, right? Hey, brother, hey, so they're praying for you. Like, what are you praying about? What? We have no idea. We just throw out phrases. Let me encourage you. Begin to lift up each other's burdens in that area. Let me encourage you. Some would say, I'd love to be involved in more. What's the step? Well, obviously, one, look. Sometimes you'll see something. I got to work on this. Sometimes you can come ask, what can I do? There's a lot of people. We have a database we put together, and people have given us their names and their cell phone numbers, and we send out a text. Hey, we'd love someone, if you could help weed, if you could help do this, come do that. And then people show up and do it. That's a great way to say, hey, I'm willing to help in these areas. That's a great way. Can I tell you, this is how a church begins to grow and expand. Where this group primarily, it is the Sunday night crowd, says, what can I do? Some of you are doing something. Can I say thank you? Thank you for the sacrifice you make. When I see Damon on the lawnmower, was it Friday I saw him drive through the other day? I tell you, I smile. Not because he runs into anything, all right? It's not that. I smile because I don't have to climb on that lawnmower. I don't mind climbing on the lawnmower. I'm just glad I don't have to. It's such a great blessing. Let me encourage you. I want to do my part. I want to do as much as I can because that is what my job is. But also my job is to help the church realize that this church, no ministry revolves around one man or a small staff. It's a church. And if you begin to expand and you say, I see this and I can do this and I can do that, the impact becomes, 100 times more on a crowd this size tonight. 100 times more from this impact right here tonight. Father, we love you. We thank you for the privilege we have to worship you this evening. Just the opportunity. When we think of this man by the name, I believe Tychius is pronounced his name, Father, that was a burden bearer for Paul. Father was willing to say, let me do this for you. Lord, we don't know a whole lot about him. Well, we can dig some history. We can